So we have quorum, and first item on our agenda is approval of the meeting summary from our last meeting, which was August 1st. Do we have any corrections to that summary? Just remind you that the summary is just that, that the record of the meeting, the recorded record stands as the official record. Moss.
Hey everyone, good to be with you here today. I noticed a couple. Oh, I think I got muted accidentally.
No, it's no accident. Wait, I thought I was muted. Sorry.
But yeah, so I was saying I noticed a couple of things on the meeting minutes or meeting summary, and I think so. For one of the things was that there was a date that needed to be corrected. It said the input for the guiding principles was received on the July 18th meeting rather than the August 1st meeting, so that date should be updated. And then I noticed too, and I know that these are summary, but I think that having representative summaries are very important, given that, like, at a glance, if you're trying to jog your memory before a call like this, or for our crew to jog our memories, or also for any community member that wants to stay up to date and can't watch the whole video, having a comprehensive meeting summary is important for that purpose. So in that, I think there should be additional clarity around the discussion of the guiding principles and how that played out, and especially that Carolyn, I think that the characterization currently implies that that the CAC and the TMC have equal say in the development of the guiding principles, even though both Tom, you, and Carolyn very clearly had a discussion around minute 16 of the video that it's not really a joint effort. It's TMC can provide suggestions for us to consider, but it's not, so it's collaborative in that sense, but it's not a collaborative process in that the TMC has direct say in what ultimately gets put forward to the board. And then I also kind of thought it was interesting or odd that Carolyn's comment and input onto that part of the statement wasn't included, and that Tom's, yours was specifically. And I just kind of I don't think it's intentional, but it could come off a little bit sexist and, disrespectful that not both of the chairs that spoke on this topic were recognized in the summary of this. And so trying to promote that all the feedback is accurately captured, even in the summary portion of that. So I think those are a couple of things specific to the meeting minutes that I wanted to know.
Sorry, Amanda, I missed the last comment that you made about Vice Chair Campbell. You were saying she should be referred to as Chair Campbell because she chaired the meeting?
Oh, no, just that in the meeting summary, only your remarks are acknowledged in there, even though Carolyn made remarks that were almost the same or even further than what you stated during that section of the conversation. I just think it's odd that that's not acknowledged in the meeting summary. And I think that she should be represented equally in that, especially since she was leading the meeting too. It just seems odd that that part of it would be left off, and also just changing overall how the tone of what is conveyed about the summary of these statements.
Okay, thanks for those comments. We will definitely take those into account as we move forward with these meeting summaries. Do we have any other comments? I'm sorry, I see Eva.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In the point 4 of the meeting summary, it states that PAG Community Affairs Administrator Paki Rico and Vice Chair Campbell led the discussion. Actually, Vice Chair Campbell led the discussion with technical assistance provided by myself. And the reason why I'd like that to be recorded is because I really want to stress that I feel like we need a little bit more support technically, administratively. For example, before last, our edits to the guiding principles were solicited, but there was no follow-up. Okay, email them to me. please send them now so that we can already be prepared for the meeting and go into the meeting with those ready. And then we didn't also have ready a way to be able to be collaborating on the document in real time. And those are the kinds of supports that I think this committee really needs to have in place in order to meet these deadlines that are our goals. So for that reason, I would like the assistance that I had to provide technically during the last meeting to be recorded in the meeting summary.
Okay. As I understand it, you would revise that first sentence of number 4 to read, Vice Chair Campbell led the discussion with support from PAG Community Affairs Administrator Paki Rico.
No, I would like it to say that she led the discussion with technical assistance provided by CAC member Ava Romero. And then Paki helped, but for the first half of the meeting, I had to drive technically in order to ensure that we had a collaborative document in front of us.
Share screen.
Okay. Do we have any other comments? Joanne?
Hello, Tom. I wanted to point out that earlier, when Moss was discussing the changes or corrections, the actual term used was that the meeting summary gives the appearance of sexism. And I've been away, I've had surgery, I'm recovering from surgery, but the last time I attended a meeting, I thought we were going to speak in a respectful manner to each other and not throw out what I consider a very volatile term.
Okay, thank you for the comment.
Thank you, Tom.
Sorry, can you all hear me? This is Abby Okrent.
Yes, I was just
Okay.
on you.
Sorry, I can't see. I'm concerned that we might not have quorum because we've had a number of members miss at least 3 meetings in a row. And so my understanding from reading the rules at the beginning of being on this committee was that if you miss 3 meetings in a row, you're automatically not part of the committee anymore. And I think that if we're just at quorum, at least one person who's here right now has missed at least 3 meetings in a row. So I'm not sure we can continue.
Yeah, I just point out that some time ago, the board responded to us about this issue and indicated that with the difficulties of hybrid and COVID impacts and others on our committee, and the fact that it's a very large committee, that we would be giving the benefit of the doubt to members who were unable to attend. And so what we do is we reach out to members when they are unable to meet and determine if they're willing to continue and will be able to attend meetings. And it'll be with that sort of feedback and deliberation that decisions are made about the removal, should it come to that, of any members, just for everyone's information. Although this isn't an agenda item, Abby, if you'd like to add that later, we can do that. But as of now, we have plenty of folks for our quorum. Okay, those are the comments I see, and given those comments,
Well,
do I
Tom-
hear an approval of, or a motion for approval of the meeting?
Tom, if I may address Joanne's remark quickly, because I think there was my statement was misunderstood, and so I just want to make sure that that's clear for the record.
Of course, go ahead.
So what I said was that the omission of Vice Chair Campbell's comments on this matter could be interpreted as sexist because only Chair McGovern's comments were explicitly noted. And that my core issue was that those statements, that characterization that happened in the meeting summary implies, incorrectly implies that the TMC has equal weight on the guiding principles, which are actually solely the CAC's production. So that's my core thing I want to address, and also just acknowledging that we should be really representative of the content that we're and who we're highlighting in these meeting summaries. Otherwise, we could have the perspective of sexist or racist or whatever representation on such meeting summaries. And I don't think that we should be concerned about stating that, because that's really important for us to have open dialogues and to acknowledge when these, I think, could be very honest, just errors or just lapses in whatever, like things happen, but we should be able to freely speak about that and acknowledge it and work to remedy it when it happens. So that's all I'll have to say on that. And then on the notes about the bylaws, I guess I'm confused because when you look at the bylaws currently, what Abby brought up is still documented there. And so wherever this policy change from a board level occurred, it's not really documented in any public way. So I think clarity around that and documentation provided to us would also be helpful, so we know what's required of us. Like, can I miss 3 meetings? Because I've been really vigilant or diligent about attending every meeting. And even though it's costing me election hour or vacation hours at my job to be here. And I think that would be really helpful to have so that we understand what's expected of all of us.
Sure. We will forward that that memo from the board to all the CAC members. And Chris.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move approval of the meeting summary with changes as offered by Moss and sorry.
Ava.
Sorry, yep, Miss Romero.
Dr. Romero, thank you.
Dr.
I second that. I'll second that.
Very good. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
And there's one abstention, Tom.
All right, thank you. That was
Joanne.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Professor Sabat.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is call to the audience or report on submitted public comments for the meeting. And we have not received any. And so we'll move on to item number 4. And we'll kick this off with Paki providing us with a quick update on where we are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's good to see all of you in the room, and thank you for those of you online. I also want to say thank you for the last meeting for your help and assistance. I was very under the weather, and I appreciate that. It was great teamwork. So I'm back to being myself today, hopefully. Okay, so before you get to dive into your guiding principles, what I wanted to do is just give you a quick overview of where we are right now. I think most of you know this, but as you know, the red lines from the CAC discussion that you had on August 1st, those were sent to the RTA Technical Management Committee for review and technical feedback. The TMC did meet on August 10th to discuss and provide that feedback. And you received that feedback that same day with edits on August 10th. I will be pulling those up on slides, and I also have a Word document in case there are any additional revisions that you'd like to make. Today you're meeting to finalize your draft, and then after today's discussion, I'll be submitting this final draft to the RTA board, which is due this Thursday, August 18th for their packet, and then they will be reviewing it and providing any direction at their meeting on the 25th. And then if needed, they'll be weighing in on any policy related issues. Just quickly, the role of the CAC during this process. And again, this is something that you already know. Just to recap, you're an advisory body. You'll be reviewing your named project, the named project list to identify priority projects that meet regional goals. You'll be narrowing down project lists to match the budget set by the RTA board. You'll be seeking technical support from the TMC as needed and as an iterative process. You'll be providing input for the development of the draft plan that Pima County voters will likely support. Recommending initial draft plan to the board by July 1st of next year, and then you'll be refining the plan as directed by the board based on public feedback. These are just the next steps that I just wanted to remind what will be happening after you complete your guiding principles. This is just an illustration. I shared this with the TMC last week as well. This just is just a quick visual on how the iterative process will be working, not just for today's guiding principles, but just for project review and also for the RTA draft plan. Will be, you'll be receiving board direction. CAC and TMC will go back and forth, in this case with red lines and review, revisions, feedback, and then in this case with the guiding principles, the CAC will produce their final draft, and then it'll go to the RTA board for review and final direction. So with that, as I mentioned earlier, I have a slide for each of the 8 guiding principles and each of the 10 goals. So what I can do for you now to facilitate this process is show you what your revisions are from August 1st, and they're now in black. They've been converted into what you said on August 1st. The blue text is what the TMC provided as feedback last week. I tried to show you what they crossed out or added, just to give you an idea of what their suggestions are. As a group, then you can decide whether to accept these changes, make a different revision, or just move forward.
Yeah, let me give a quick summary of how the TMC responded to the request to review and comment, give us feedback on our guiding principles. First of all, unanimously, I would say, although a vote of sorts was not taken, there was full support for the work that we did. I didn't hear really any suggestion that we had provided anything they didn't agree with or that we had missed anything. They did have some very thoughtful, I thought, good comments that we can consider. But just as a reminder to everyone, Paki said it a minute ago, but it doesn't hurt to repeat that this is our document. And when we complete it today, we will send it to the board as our final document. They may comment on it. They may simply accept it as provided, as they did the last time. But that's obviously their prerogative. The TMC will also receive a copy of it, but not for additional comment, simply for their information. And they made it clear that their intention is to utilize our document as they go through their own individual jurisdictional rating and prioritization process. They're aware, I think, at this point that in September, I think on the 22nd, they will be meeting in an all-day session to work on those priorities, and they'll break out into small groups and cover different regions, and then come back together. They have a very robust program planned, and underlying it all, and perhaps guiding it, if you will, would be the framework which we will be finalizing today. So without further ado, I'd like to jump into these individual comments, and we can discuss them and decide on them as we go forward. Once we've completed it, Paki will be updating as we go, and we'll at the end of this process here in this item, we'll review those final edits, and then we'll decide if we're ready, and we will be ready to vote on those and hopefully approve them. Okay, I see a couple of comments. I'll start with Carolyn.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a further comment on those because there is one that you see on this, we'll prioritize at the beginning. And I will say it was a little deja vu at the TMC because they had a very similar discussion to shall or should and must.
Yeah.
And they
Thanks.
went around the horn like we did about that, and some of them being must, and the same issues. And so someone near the end had this this suggestion, which you'll see throughout, which is will prioritize, and then they, because of that, they got rid of all that should and must and all that. So just so you know.
Yeah, that struck me at the time as a really smart and unfortunately fairly obvious solution that I wish I had thought of. All right, in the room, Arlen has a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, it was just a comment. The nature of many of these as a group is to effectively change the grammar slightly to deal with the will prioritize. And yes, we could look at each one of these individually, but really those changes are all the same change on all the items. In the interest of time, it just makes sense to me. This is a well-written edition, I thought, in football. So maybe the way we can just consider them as in those types of changes
In
its
total.
entirety.
Yeah. Bruce. Okay, well, let's go ahead and deal with this. Do we have objections from anyone online or in the room about the suggestion to simply accept this basic format change to will prioritize and then remove the shoulds and shalls and musts? Moss?
I 98% agree with Arlen and Bruce. I think there was just like a couple of bullets that I wanted to change what the term what we're using, and it specifically was the equity bullet where it says we don't want to strive for equity, but we want to do it, right? And so providing equitable services. So I like that's kind of like the nitpicky thing, but I agree a lot of this is okay. And then I also saw that the TMC proposed combining the second bullet and the 8 bullet, which I'm like totally fine with. There was, if we decide to use their change, I think that there was just like some typing error or whatever on somebody.
Yep,
one of the statements got a little bit bungled there, that the first clause of it got a little bungled, and so I just would want, if we're considering that, I want to talk about that, but if we're not considering it, then we don't need to waste the time. So those are my 2 thoughts on that.
Yes, Carolyn.
Yes, thanks, Moss. What I'd like to see is us go through them. So all we have is the one on the screen. I think we were just dealing with the issue of will prioritize instead of should and must. So I still think we need to go through every one of them, and it would be nice to hear a little for the committee that wasn't watching the TMC meeting, kind of the evolution of where they came up with things, because I think they were really in agreement with a lot of what we talked about. So you can give a little context as to the combining or the this or the that or the typos or whatever. But if we Arlen seemed to talk about just that we'll prioritize, I still think we should go through each one and make sure everybody's okay.
Okay. I still would like to know if there's anyone objecting to that general suggestion. And I haven't seen anyone, nor have the folks online indicated such. So let's go ahead through these individually, and we'll kind of skip over this. We'll prioritize improving, et cetera, except as Moss indicated on number 5, and perhaps on combining 2 and 6. But the general thought of using will prioritize, we won't continue to debate. Bruce?
I'm sorry, I missed the last meeting.
I'm sorry
I'm
too.
pretty happy.
Wow.
as you know, the meeting full outside raises issue. So I think on this particular priority or bullet, I just want to make sure that, at least I voice my concern, move beyond these and into the discussion of priorities. How we look at priorities, I think, is critically important. And what I see embedded in this particular statement, it says a regional network. And for me, that means that we need to really look at those key corridors that are the backbone of the regional system. That is not necessarily mean that I guess the question, the issue is, I don't think the jurisdictional issues address that. So at the very beginning of this process, PEG staff gave us a very broad overview of the condition of the regional network, regional corridors, whether it be Harbor Road, Grant Road, the interstate, and so on. And I just want to put my position on the table that I think we need to take that perspective in addition to the jurisdictional recommendations and look at the whole system as we set priorities and decide where we think money should be allocated. I think that's embedded in this concept, but I just wanted to state explicitly that's the point of view I'm going to take as we get a prioritization of project.
Very good. I completely agree with that. And as we request from PAG staff an overview of our plan and how it actually metrically impacts and improves performance of the regional network, that will obviously be a huge factor in that. So we'll keep thinking about that as our subcommittee puts, or our working group puts together our tool, the
Hi, doggies.
that we might have on it, that we might have individually, what weights we may put on things like regional corridors should be reflected and utilized by this committee in coming up with priorities.
I guess I'd just like to clarify that some of all the jurisdictional projects may and may not in fact address the larger regional need, and that gets us. Oh my God, so now develop with it.
Not bad, not bad. Very good. Okay. Any other comments on this one? And general comments? All right, let's go to the next one.
Okay, and I also wanted to point out that on some of them, there's red text. These are just really minor clarification edits that staff recommended. So when we get to those, I'll point them out. So the second guiding principle says that a future RTA plan will prioritize including an implementation timeline and identify specific projects as well as categorical elements.
I think identify should be identifying.
I do have a Word doc. Do you want me to pull that up and do this, or do you want me just to? Right now they seem minor. I have my own copy in front of me.
I think that's fine.
That's fine.
When you
You
need
guys let me
to,
know.
yeah, when you need to, or when someone feels the need to see it, then they just simply need to sing out. So we have a comment here from the TMC that the timeline will need to allow for flexibility. I guess I would say that that's the whole idea, I think, of number 8, and flexibility both in the timeline and in identifying the projects as well as within the categorical elements themselves. And flexibility is something that we discussed quite a bit last time. I thought we should notify the board that we felt that was important and have them start working on it. Nearly the rest of you felt that it was important enough that it needed to actually reside in our guiding principles. And so it does down at number 8, and refers, in my view, to all of the previous bullets ahead of it. When we get to the discussion about combining it with 8, which I'm going to do right now, actually, we can have a further discussion about that.
You want me to jump to the merged one so they can see, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, jump to 8 then.
Okay. So number two, that's what I was going to add. Number two was merged with the other one so that now we have a merged ninth principle that says a future RTA plan will prioritize including an implementation timeline for identifying specific projects and categorical elements and a process to reasonably respond to changing circumstances, conditions, new knowledge, and information over the life of the plan. And on this one, we did change it to identifying.
All right, everybody read that and let me know if you have comments. Bruce?
Just a question that refers to timeline, but does this also imply flexibility and unallocated funds in the future? When the project is not needed, those funds could be allocated. That implied in this.
Yeah, it is. The idea though is again that the board has all these issues to deal with in setting that that policy. And on top of all that, they have to remain in good standing with the statutes. So yes, absolutely. Mas?
So this is where I think the sentence got a little bungled. The original, the second bullet read, including an implementation timeline and identify specific projects and categorical elements. So if this reads as though the implementation timeline is for identifying specific projects, and I think they're supposed to be separate. So my proposed revision to this, if we, for this section, is to say, will prioritize including implementation timeline, identifying specific projects and categorical elements, and a process to reasonably respond to changing circumstances, conditions, new knowledge, and information over the life of the plan. And I can drop that in the chat so it's documented, and I know RTA staff can download the chat and post that publicly, so there's no visibility issues with that, if it's helpful.
Yeah, let's do that in real time. Well, let's hear any other comments about this. And thanks for that, Mas. I like those myself. Any other reaction to that suggestion?
Let me be able to.
I just see a bunch of thumbs up here. And so let's go ahead and pull that up and make the change right now. Now, as I was saying before, I felt that guiding principle number 8 actually referred to our entire framework. But if everyone thinks that number 2, as did the TMC, is the place where it should be placed, I don't object to that. But just want to throw out that we don't intend to simply limit this flexibility to those individual parts of the plan that are shown here in number 2, but rather to the entire plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amanda Moss, if you don't mind, now that I have it up, I'd rather do this live so that we can ensure that we're documenting this correctly.
Yeah, no problem. So after timeline, put a comma and then delete the 4.
Got it.
And then I think that's it. I think that's it.
Yeah, okay, that's what I had. I just want to make sure. So now it says the merged one is the RTA plan will prioritize including an implementation timeline, identifying specific projects and categorical elements, and a process to reasonably respond to changing circumstances, etc.
Okay, Arlen.
Yeah, Tom, to your comment, I'm sitting here looking at this, and it, to me, when you start the new one, including the former number 8, suggests a change to things that you otherwise would do. Everything else is we're doing this, doing this, doing this. And then the last one identifies change, the flexibility and such. So I think just stylistically, if nothing else, putting that one at the end of these, so it's going to wind up being 7 or 8 at the end of that list. I think that makes sense.
So eliminate number 2 and put the combined 2, 8 as the new 7th and final bullet.
Sure, I can't count, but whatever that is.
Well,
Yeah.
8 minus 1 would be 7. So
That's
Yes.
what he's-
Not all engineers.
Okay.
That's Ramon asked me how retirement was going. Apparently that's the real answer.
all right.
Yeah, they'll be
any-
renamed, Mr. Chair, excuse them.
I-
So
I
I'll go ahead
see-
and delete it unless someone else.
Yeah, well, let's hold on. I see approval around this table. Anyone want to weigh in from the remotes? All right, thank you. Go ahead and delete number 2. And you can renumber number 8 as number 7.
I will
Well,
do.
you're gonna renumber all of them.
Yeah, I'll renumber all of them. I
Okay.
just wanted to.
All right, so the old number 3 we'll go to next.
So the old number 3 says that a future RTA plan will prioritize identifying an implementation budget based on projected excise tax revenues, local funding commitments, and other funding sources, including maintenance funding commitments secured from each responsible jurisdiction in the RTA taxing district prior to plan approval. Staff recommendation on this one was just to insert RTA, just to identify the taxing district.
Any objections? Very good. Let's move on to our old number 4.
Old number 4, the RTA will prioritize enhancing safety and the regional transportation system's overall ability to improve mobility, accessibility, livability, and economic and cultural vitality.
Again, it's crickets in this room. All right, now the old number 5.
The RTA plan will prioritize striving for equitable services and equitable growth by making investments in historically underserved and disinvested areas and populations.
Just speaking to Moss's comment, I presume from what I heard, Moss, that you would suggest eliminating striving for and substituting the word providing.
That's right.
Okay, any objection to that? That one sounds good. We do have a comment here that I'm not sure needs to go into the bullet, but the TMC noted that defining and ensuring measurability of these items is something that will be necessary. And of course, I think we understand that. And as we're going through our rating process, that will be an important conversation that we have about how we rate those and what sort of things we want to see to be able to tell the public that we succeeded.
Yeah, and if I might just add, Tom, I think
Yeah.
I completely agree with everything you said. And I just think it's interesting that bullet points 5 and 6 got this kind of caveat from the TMC. In part because I feel like equity and climate change are some of the most easy things to quantify and measure and track against, especially given all the examples that we're seeing in our nationally about plans to evaluate and assess resiliency and equity. And so I just want to, for folks who maybe haven't heard weren't with us in some of the past conversations, that these were introduced and based on members doing research and talking about how in different reports there's actual metrics identified by other communities and NPOs for exactly how to do these types of things. And in fact, the federal government has an entire Justice 40, has a map that shows where transportation disadvantaged communities go, and a whole methodology fleshed out for how to do that. I found Oregon did an equity evaluation for their transportation system, which is now informing their update for their regional plans. And so a lot of these things are available and shouldn't be a concern for us as we are moving into that stage. And we'll just want to also flag that other terms that maybe are more subjective than some of these than climate change and equitable service, like livability. I think that could be like an area where we'll really need to think about how to measure that. But these two specific goals that were identified by the TMC, I think should not be a concern for us, given the wealth of information that's available to us to draw upon.
Yeah, it's a good point. Remember the TMC didn't have the benefit of our multiple conversations on these items. So it's just kind of a reminder, I think. And it may also point to the fact that many, if not all, of the jurisdictions don't regularly track those outcomes necessarily as goals. They obviously track much of it just in terms of data gathering, but in its use as priority for projects or funding, perhaps not so much. Abby Okren, do you have a?
Yeah, thanks. I was going to say something similar to Moss. I think that it's great to have metrics and measurability for all of our goals. I don't know that needs to be in the goals, and if I think we should strive for some consistency there, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be just in those two areas. I don't object to it being there. I just want to point that out. I don't really know what the solution is. I'd like us to move forward with this, and I don't want to make it take more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think
we need to be thinking about measurability. Okay.
Sorry. Your connection is a little bit iffy, so we picked up about 3/4 of the words, but it was enough to understand what you were saying. And I would agree that this is just a comment, a reminder for us, and it's not something that belongs definitely inside of any specific ones of these guiding principles. Do you want to object, Carolyn?
No, I just want having.
You are objectionable.
And that is what the 2/3 of what I said was, Tom. So you nailed it from the context.
Yeah, I just wanted to, since I watched the TMC meeting, I just wanted to add that they weren't suggesting we add those to one or two or all. It really was just a comment. I think that's why I put it under there like that to show us what the conversation was. So yeah, I think striking all that is just fine.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I inserted comments from the TMC just so that you would understand what they had to say. But if you all agree, then I can remove this comment from guiding principle number 5 first.
Yeah.
And then for guiding principle number 6, the RTA will prioritize addressing the impacts of climate change and striving to enhance the region's environmental sustainability and resilience. And I will do the same if you all agree.
Not hearing or seeing on my screen any objections to that, so.
I'm sorry. I wonder if we should get rid of strive in that context too.
Oh,
I don't disagree with what Paki just did. I'm just wondering if where we got striving out. And another thing we should also, I don't know, I'm not the environmental expert. Maybe we are only striving.
Addressing.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying, Abby. I think that's a good call. I'm wondering, addressing the impacts of climate change and enhancing
Yep.
the region's environmental sustainability and resilience.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good. Any objection to that? All right, very good. Let's make that change.
Okay,
All right,
there we go.
number, old number 7, new number 6. Bruce,
Yeah, I'd like to propose changing the word considering to addressing. Transfer. And it seems to me, I know they're trying to find different words, action words for each.
Yeah.
Or affirmance statement. That's all.
I second that.
That's a good.
Thank
a lot of
Bruce.
nodding heads around this table. Let's go ahead and make that and see how it reads then.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to point out that originally the CAC had should consider. It was just changed to considering for
I
RTA plan.
understand.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
We're reconsidering.
you're reconsidering your consideration.
Point
So-
made.
So it'll now read an RTA plan will prioritize future land use.
Addressing.
Oh, I'm sorry, addressing,
Addressing future land.
address. Will prioritize addressing future land use, travel patterns, mode choices, and technological advances.
Okay. And we've dealt with number 8 already. We will renumber those.
The GPA number 8 will go away. Correct, because it's merged with at the bottom,
Well, no, wait, hang on. Just bring up
the new one.
The new one.
The
Oh,
new,
yeah, okay.
yeah,
Go ahead.
the new one combines 2 and 8.
All right, thank you.
We did that now, and I'll renumber them. Okay,
GP number 7.
yes. Yeah, I'll change those. Additionally, the following transportation goals have been discussed as possible priorities in a well-balanced RTA plan. One of the comments that Technical Management Committee is just suggested that these should all be measurable.
Before we go further, John Bernal.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think if I wanted to go back to number 2 on your discussion here, because I think we may have left out implementation budget in all our discussions back and forth. It talked about implementation timeline, but I don't believe it mentioned budget.
Wait, it was on a different one, wasn't it?
We,
Yes.
It's in number 3. The old number 3 is.
Oh, gotcha. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I missed that. All right, very good. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you,
Yeah, I
John.
think we had that originally, John. I think you're right about that, but we realized that in the budget, people here at least wanted to include more information about that budget, including local and federal money, et cetera. So that
Absolutely.
came its own.
That's right. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good, thanks. So Paki, just to confirm, do we have, so what's number 2 now? Is that where the merged is? Or are you going to put that at number 7?
so my understanding from a comment was that guiding principle number 8 will now become the 2 and
The 2 combined?
the 2 combined.
Okay,
And I'll renumber.
Yeah.
2, 3, yeah, I was just,
So it will become number 2.
and it'll become number
No,
Seven.
7.
7.
Well,
number 7.
They'll become number 7.
Line 2 and 8. Let's become
Mr.
number
Chair,
7.
maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I thought the suggestion from the TMC was to put it higher up. I mean, these aren't prioritized, but
Right.
haven't they suggested putting it higher up? That doesn't matter to me.
Well, one of the things we explained to the TMC, Mr. Chair, is that these are not prioritized. Later, when you draft the plan, we can revisit that. But for now, these are The RTA plans priorities.
Okay, I remember.
So
Thank you.
I'll make sure I renumber and unless you want to.
Let's move on then to the goals. There was a kind of overarching comment on the goals about the need for metrics, which we've discussed here. So we'll continue looking at these, which I believe all are staff suggested changes or additions.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. On all 10 goals, the Technical Management Committee did not have any additional edits other than to just remind the committee that they should be measurable. In terms of staff, the first goal, the change that we are suggesting is to say manage and reduce congestion by using strategies and tools such as travel demand management and intelligent transportation systems. It's just a little bit of rearranging of the words, but nothing was removed, if you agree.
I like it. I don't know how everyone else feels about it. Those present like it. Bruce, do you want to comment?
Yeah, it just, sentence that says additionally, the following transportation goals have been discussed as possible priorities. The word possible kind of gives a lack of focus and commitment to it, it seems to me. Is this wording going to be included in whatever final document we put together around this?
This is the original wording.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, I think it was meant to not make, maybe under promise. And not to give the impression that they're all priorities. And they may not be achievable, especially if they're not measurable.
Well, I guess I challenge that a little bit. I mean, I think we are striving to include all these things in the plan. Possible. I mean, there's no discipline or in that listing. That word troubles me, I guess. So
I agree.
I agree. Thanks, Bruce, for raising that. I think that we should have stronger language.
I agree also.
So with that change, additionally, the following transportation goals have been discussed as priorities in a well-balanced RTA plan.
yes.
Yeah. And why was that why is that portion of it underlined? Was that something that staff added or?
No, this is the original from 2018.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
pull the underline off.
Mr. Chairman, I also think it would be appropriate, since we are concerned about measurable. I don't see any reason why we couldn't just add these should all be measurable as part of this component.
Yeah, we can, that asterisk is a suggestion to, okay.
You could actually,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, you could actually include the word measurable where possible was. So there have been discussed as measurable priority. And then it's in there.
Additionally, the following transportation goals have been discussed as measurable priorities.
But the following measurable transportation goals have been discussed as priorities.
Or you could tack it to the goals too.
Yeah. Any preference out there?
I like measurable priorities in the sentence.
Mr. Chair, I like measurable also. Measurable priorities or measurable goals. Okay. There it is. Yep. All right. And we saw goal number 1, right?
Yes, and I'll remove this because it's now included. Okay, so goal number 1, what it looks like. Goal number 2 through 5 did not change, but I'll read them quickly. Goal number 2 is to provide safe, reliable, healthy, and efficient regional mobility. Goal number 3 is to improve transit ridership. Goal number 4 is to reduce crashes among vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and others.
Can, on this one, we just add a comma after pedestrians? I'm a fan of the Oxford comma personally, and it seems like we can use that. So.
Actually,
I will
I
debate
do
people.
I must have missed.
Okay.
I reject that idea.
Okay, throw down.
I object to.
Well, I'll highlight it and play with it. The fifth goal is to reduce wildlife-related crashes and to provide for wildlife connectivity.
Chair,
Yes.
I don't think we need the two, reduce wildlife related crashes and provide for wildlife connectivity.
Yeah, good point.
Mr. Chair, this is Mary.
Mary? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to also let everyone know that the TMC had the same conversation about crashes versus altercations and other words, and in the end decided to go with us with the crashes.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the reps was, I think, attached to the police department, one of the police departments, and didn't really like crashes, which I could imagine, and suggested collisions, but
I think he's on our call.
we agree with that.
Yes, it was the town manager of Marana that came from being the chief of
Oh,
police.
that's right.
But I think it was important to let people know that the mindset of the TMC is very much close to parallel to what our mindset is in these areas.
Right. Thank you very
Mary.
much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Mary. On the goal number 5, the other thing that we could probably just like tidy up is remove the 4 after provide. So it would read reduce wildlife related crashes and provide wildlife connectivity, but just tighten in things.
Does that work?
All right. Number 6.
Number 6, this is a staff recommendation, improve the conditions of removing all existing transportation infrastructure. And the purpose of this is because the 2 billion RTA next plan, the use of the word all here would be impossible. So it would read, improve the conditions of existing transportation infrastructure.
So I think, so yeah, I appreciate staff flagging this. I think if I recall going back to the conversation, we added this in. I think the intent was to ensure that conditions were improved for all modes of transportation in the existing in the existing infrastructure. So I wonder, but I see that this currently written doesn't do that. So I'm wondering if the proposed revision to capture that intent is improve existing transportation infrastructure conditions for all modes of transportation. Or if we need to list it out because people just want to avoid using all, then I'm totally on board with that. I think that was wanted to anchor us in what I think the intent of this was.
Any other comments? Diane, did you have something?
I don't know if that the last goal will have multifunctionality to key corridors, if that becomes redundant or not. I think we're getting at the same thing with those two concepts. So.
Tom, this is Joanne.
Yes, Joanne.
I'm looking at the item goal number 7, where we use the wording active transportation options.
Yes.
Would that be, and I am not the wordsmith here and nobody's going to hurt my feelings, but would that be a better duplication to put that up in goal number 6, also that wording?
So number 6 is talking about the conditions. Often, I think we first go to the surface conditions, but obviously there's more to it than that.
Well,
and number 7 is a little more about the network connection, maybe. I don't know.
I guess I was thinking of like existing or have it see conditions of existing active transportation infrastructure, or is that not the right word to use there to kind of, I think, I don't really know who's saying what. It's too small for my old eyes, but somebody was just saying that, maybe move the all transportation modes Was that Moss?
Yeah.
That was me.
Well, it was
Yeah.
Tuck.
She can probably come up with
Tuck,
better
yes.
wording than I, but do you think that moving active, no, oh no, God, you don't have to make it bigger for me. My eyes are just old.
for us
But
too.
putting like existing active transportation?
I think that that's pretty close. The one thing I think that other folks might, one of the things that we discussed too was trying to ensure we include, you know, for public transit too, which I think is, if I recall correctly, is different than active transportation. But I think that what you're getting at is a helpful way to move forward. But yeah, I do think like what Tom was saying is this one focuses on the condition of existing infrastructure and just wanting to ensure that all modes are benefit from improved conditions. And then the goal 7 is more about, as Tom pointed out, increasing safety, connection. And that one's really focused on bicycle and pedestrian and facilities and such like that. So, but yeah, I
So-
see Ava and Abigail have their, or Abby, sorry.
Yeah, I remember something about why we worded this number 7 this way. It was to put an emphasis on prioritizing health enhancements through active transportation options. And maybe if we put the word health in there, it will help to clarify that, right? That through providing safer, more connected bicycle and pedestrian facilities or otherwise enhance health through active transportation options. Because that's really what
Hold
that
on
one
to
was
that.
there for.
Yeah, hold on to that thought, and let's go back to number 6 for just a second. We had Moss's suggestion about rewording this. Another suggestion might be improve the conditions of all modes, all existing modes of our transportation infrastructure.
Sure.
Kevin,
Yeah, I was just gonna suggest slightly different wording. Improve conditions of existing infrastructure for all transportation modes.
that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's see how that looks on.
Moss, I assume that would address.
I think so. Yeah, we're just flipping where we're making it a little concise. I get it.
And
Thanks, Kevin.
for this one, I would suggest taking out the first transportation, so we're not repeating the word
Right.
transportation.
Yeah, good call.
So improve the conditions of existing transportation for all transportation modes.
Of existing infrastructure for all transportation modes.
Mhm.
Okay. Good.
All right. I'll remove this.
Abby Cochran.
Yeah, I was mainly just going to say what Ava already said to explain what active transportation modes was. I also want to thank Joanne for raising how tiny the font was and thank Pocky for making it bigger because that has also made my life easier.
Yeah, no, please let me know if you can't see this. I'm sorry. I thought I asked earlier. I
It's
couldn't
great
even
now.
see it and I'm trying to type.
Woohoo, I got a win for the day. I'm going home.
No, we don't want to lose our quorum again. All right, goal number 7, provide safer, more connected bicycle and pedestrian facilities or otherwise enhance active transportation options. That was the or was, I guess, causing me pause.
Yeah,
This
me
is
too.
Abigail. I would like and.
And Joanne,
Diane.
Diane, I'm sorry, why did
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
too many
I-
Joannes and Dianes?
I think we need to remember that these goals need to be measurable. And I'm a little concerned that there are some talking about measuring health. I don't know that that's possible. I know transportation existing measurements exist, but I don't know about that one.
I can comment on that, Diane. Thanks. It's a good question and I appreciate the grounding and we have to measure these things. I think too, you know, there's the EPA actually has a tool where you can like plug in emissions and it'll calculate health impacts. So, and there's a lot of research and work that's done in partnership between the public health community and the transportation community, because there's such an intersection of topics for across those two sectors. So I think that we will be able to, you know, measure things like improved air quality. There's also, you know, physical activity benefits, less time sitting. Like these things have been studied quite a bit for, I don't know, it's been like a decade since I was in school at least. And so we were talking about these types of things. And so I don't have like quite as specific as studies as I found for the climate change and equity stuff, but I'm like 98% certain we'll be able to find something to measure public health improvements through transportation.
Thank you for that, Moss. I'm all for it then.
Yeah, I was gonna comment, Mr. Chair, that there is something in the public health community that's gone beyond that of community determinants of health, and included of which are transportation options. I did not understand what enhanced active transportation options by itself. So it makes sense to me to have enhanced health through active transportation options, to clarify that. And what I would say is, on many of these things, the measurable, how goals are going to be measured are going to probably be stand-ins or indicators. They're not going to be overarching. You're going to measure the entire universe.
Right.
That can't happen. So there's going to be indicators that are going to be more targeted to stand in for the overall item: health, climate change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
And that's just the nature of the way this is going to work.
that's a good point, a good reminder for us, and all the others are kind of the same.
Right.
You know, if you're gonna say is safety improved, you know, what constitutes improvement in our mind in order to recommend the project? Dale.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that what we're really trying to measure here is the improvement, and whether it's an improvement that is going to have an impact on health, not that we're trying to measure everybody's health. So just like we're trying to avoid crashes for safety.
Good point. Ava?
Yeah, I was just recalling a conversation that we had earlier, you know, about goals, right? And I remember we talked about how some of these goals, we can't necessarily ensure that we're going to meet them through these transportation projects, right? So similarly, we can't necessarily ensure that active transportation projects are going to improve health, but it could certainly be a goal. And I do want to, again, lobby for changing that wording to include the word health, just because it provides more clarity to what active transportation options are supposed to mean. And can I just quickly say, as an aside, something positive, because, you know, whatever, I bitch a lot. But really, I'm very proud of this committee. I think that the wordsmithing that we've been doing over the last couple of meetings can be painful. I certainly, you know, understand that, but I also think that the care with which everybody is handling the language to ensure that it does the work that it's supposed to do, and we all know that the devil is in the details. I think these conversations have been really essential, really thoughtful. I've learned a lot. Everybody has brought their expertise to the table. And I'm really proud of the work we're doing. And I didn't want another meeting to go by without saying that.
You're here. Thank you. So we have suggested to change or to and at the end of that first line. And then if I heard accurately, and otherwise enhance health through active transportation options. Does that sound right, Ava? I think you suggested.
Yes, that sounds right to me.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments on number 7?
Just
Yes,
curious
Diane.
about the use of the word otherwise. Is that necessary?
I have to agree. The word otherwise makes it confusing for me to reach a goal.
And for me, it just means that that's really what the goal of the first clause is to enhance health through safer, more connected bike and ped facilities and other active transportation options. But I'm fine with removing it if you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to confirm, goal number 7 reads, provide safer, more connected bicycle and pedestrian facilities and enhance health through active transportation options.
Okay.
Number 8 is improve quality of air, water, and wildlife habitat and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled.
And apple pie. Okay, number 9. Bruce.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we take out grocery stores, which is very specific, and put activity centers there, which would include shopping centers, recreational facilities, and things of that kind. I realize grocery stores are important, but shopping centers, entertainment centers, parks, I think would be picked up by the term activity centers.
I think the person who suggested that, and I'm sorry that I can't recall who it was very interested in making sure that access to food as a general goal was somehow captured. If whoever that was from last time, if you could weigh in on that suggestion by Bruce.
Yes, hi, it's Rachel. Sorry, that was my suggestion. I really wanted to, I know we can't list all the different kinds of activity, but I wanted to make sure we included grocery because access to food is very difficult for people who have difficult access to transportation.
And I'm fine with that. I would just say then grocery stores and other major activity centers. I think picking up the notion of activity centers is really important. Getting people to take alternative transportation to a football game or going down to the Keno Sports Complex or going to a shopping center, I think will enhance our ability to control traffic and so on.
This is Addie, and I'm not sure who just made that comment, and I agree that it's useful to have alternative modes of transportation to football games. But if I remember correctly, the discussion around this was more about higher on Maslow's pyramid or lower of needs, things like grocery stores, medical care. I don't know if we called it critical infrastructure or what, but things more directly related to people's health and safety and survival. Not objecting to the other shopping facilities. I just think this was a prioritization.
Okay.
And the term was activity centers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had moved key destinations up, and that was supposed to be all inclusive, and then the such as by pointing out things that are kind of essential to people's health.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is a staff suggestion to just switch some wording so that it would read improve multimodal performance and access to key destinations such as, and then we've listed the priorities that you all recommended: workplaces, medical care, educational facilities, and grocery stores.
Mr. Chair, this is Mary.
Go ahead, Mary.
What about key centers of activity, such as workplaces, medical care, et cetera, because I do like the centers of activity.
Bruce?
Yeah, just to play on that, because I'm hearing the concern about grocery stores. What if we just said access to key destinations and activity centers such as workplaces, medical care, educational facilities, and grocery stores, so that we're giving the illustration of priority.
So you're okay with this then?
I would just add
And activity centers.
Yeah, just a suggestion, because grocery stores is very specific and it's not the only source of food. I would suggest, sort of in keeping with the original intent of the concept, and change grocery stores to food sources. And that will cover a multitude of places.
That work for you, Rachel?
Tom, it's Joanne.
Hang on just a second, Joanne.
Yes.
Rachel, did you hear the suggestion?
I'm not sure how I feel about it, actually. I'm sorry, Arlen.
Okay, well, ruminate on it for a minute and we'll let Joanne weigh in and then let us know how you think about it.
Are you ready, Moss? Because I'm going to speak and you got to fix it.
Go for it.
Ready?
And access to key destinations such as, and then, but not limited to, workplaces, medical care, educational facilities, and grocery stores. Just by adding, but not limited to? Go ahead, Moss, tear it apart.
Caroline?
I don't know if I have anything to tear apart. I mean, I think
Dang,
that's, sorry.
I count on you.
Sometimes.
Diane has a comment.
I just sort of drafted a quick things to say, critical destinations for food, medical care, and other life activities. That cover everything?
Say it again.
Critical destinations for food, medical care, and other life activities.
I would keep it.
I think we should
Get
keep it.
together.
We've
I-
had a
I
long
like the wording.
talk about this. And I think we should keep it with some specifics in the such as, and I have no opinion if we want to just add whatever, what did you say? Community
After key destinations and activities.
and activity centers, I think.
Let me show you what it looks like.
Plus, I think baseball is much more important than football. Swim meets too.
I'll go with baseball.
Good.
Why can't we just leave it as key activity centers? Why do we have to specify workplace, medical care?
Jamie?
Yeah, Jamie, that you were saying instead of leaving destinations in, just call it key activity centers such as?
Yeah.
I would just say key destination activity centers, and why specify workplaces versus medical care versus grocery stores versus restaurants?
I can address that. It's because those type of indicators are used to show how transportation systems are providing inequitable service. It is actually a measurement that's being used, and that's why I think too maybe using the words grocery stores are good, because that is the way that food insecurity is measured. How close or impossible it is to get to a grocery store versus like a 7-Eleven or a convenience store, which technically could be a place where you can buy food, but you're not going to have the same options as a grocery store. And that is a measurement that's used, like I said, to measure food insecurity, which is a huge problem actually in our region.
So, but these are wide open goals, right? So why can't, I mean, if we want to do something under there, like later we could have, measure food insecurity, all these other things, right? So it just seems like we're going to tie ourselves up in knots. Because I mean, in that case, how close are we to a food bank? How close, that kind of stuff. I mean, this gets really, we're really getting in the weeds with this goal. I think we just want to get people to where they need to be, right? That's what goal 9 is. So.
I guess I'm along the same lines, because when I see the word education, I don't understand why we wouldn't use schools in this case. So I'd rather just take out groceries and be more food destinations or something along those lines, just because. I mean, I could sit here and define education versus school and then grocery versus food destination. I don't know. So I guess I'm along the same lines. I don't understand why we're just focusing just on groceries as a specific destination. Well, we just mentioned workplaces as a broad, medical care, broad, education, broad.
I'm concerned that if we say something like food destination, it'll be all about getting to restaurants or something. People might misunderstand.
Well, we won't,
I mean, I think it's just,
right?
you come up with
These
a
are our
different word.
goals.
I don't know why we're getting so specific on grocery store. I guess that's.
Dale?
Yeah, I'm kind of, I kind of like food destination because it does, grocery stores, it is very specific. And, I find as an accountant with older clients and particularly single men, et cetera, I've had a number of clients who did their grocery shopping at Walgreens.
Yeah.
And, I have kind of a limited diet, but that is, so I think the food destinations or food sources would be, would probably be better than this.
But that's kind of ideal, right? To shop for groceries at the drugstore. I mean, I think that's part of what we're talking about.
Yeah, this is Abby. I can't tell where I am in the queue. I just want to make sure I'm seen.
I don't see your hand up, so
Uh,
I missed-
Okay, if I may, I don't want to cut anybody else off. I think Ava said it, and I want to emphasize this again, that grocery stores are a very, very specific metric of how well communities are doing. I used to be a community organizer in an impoverished West Side Chicago district where the only access to food was liquor stores with potato chips and such. I understand that that's where people get their food, but it is problematic, and it is something we can measure in terms of racial inequity and poverty in a community. If you look at the shooting that happened in, I think it was Buffalo, New York, that was the only grocery store available there. So it's not just about where people get food. I think grocery stores are used as a measure of health in the community and equity so often that they're a really good indicator of other things. So again, I don't object to any of these other facilities being included. I do think that the precise language of grocery stores is important.
Okay.
And I think it can, this can obviously say this is not, I think it was Joanne that said that this is not an exclusive list. There's other things we want to include, but we do want to prioritize the key points. And I think grocery stores is important.
Yeah. Carolyn?
Yeah, I just want to ditto that. I mean, there's a reason that it's groceries. I mean, that has been a real big problem in especially poor neighborhoods where they don't have access, if they don't have transportation to a grocery store. And they have, they're like, I just agree with what people are saying. That's very specific for a reason. It's been a long-standing problem in our communities.
Go ahead, Arlen.
And I'm going to say something that's counter to what I originally said, or it sounds counter. It wasn't meant to be. I was thinking in terms of groceries. I can give an hour lecture on determinants of health in terms of access to food and the need. And this is where I'm most interested in tying our transportation system to our land use much better, and access as access, and then also that the access is good enough that you can build a grocery store that has multimodal access to it in a poor area of town, because that's really where the problem is. And so whether you say and grocery stores or you could even say just and groceries, because people do get their groceries. You can get it at Walgreens, which is going to be more expensive. You're going to get it at liquor stores, but it's very selective and none of it is good for you. You can get it at convenience stores. Most of it's not good for you. And so it's really healthy food. And whether you say grocery stores, groceries, healthy food, those are the key components of this, in my opinion.
Okay, I think we had Moss with a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'll offer maybe some wording that I think includes maybe a couple of things that I've been hearing. So it's improve multimodal performance and access to key destinations, including but not limited to activity centers, workplaces, medical care, educational facilities, and Oxford comma there, access to healthy food, healthy and quality food, or I don't know if that, I know that that's been the sticking point. I'm having a hard time finding exactly what we're looking for, but I wonder if that moves us in the right direction.
Reaction to those comments? I see Joanne's hand up. Do you want to comment on this, Joanne?
I'm not sure who was talking about it earlier. Regarding the metrics and measurements that are being used by other entities regarding the specifically medical care and grocery stores. Would we like to hear that again, or am I just the only one that's slow to pick up? Because I think it sounds like it's extremely important to leave the words grocery stores in there.
Okay, Dale?
Okay, I'll take back what I said earlier, and you guys have convinced me on the grocery store word should be in there. Ava?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that specifically, according to the USDA, how the USDA reports data on the percentage of population who are considered low income, it's based on, a measure of their food insecurity, right? One of those measures is specifically how close they live to a grocery store. So proximity to a grocery store is defined specifically, right? And because we have, we have these, federal measurements. This is information that's directly from the MAP-AZ dashboard on how we define food insecurity. And because food insecurity is pretty prevalent in our region, I just wanted to throw that into the mix.
Are we ready to
Yes,
see if we got a
I'm ready.
consensus?
I am ready for that.
Okay.
Okay, read it one more time for us, Pocky.
Okay.
So goal number 9 is to improve multimodal performance and access to key destinations, including but not limited to, I'll do my commas in a minute, activity centers, workplaces, medical care and educational facilities, and grocery stores.
They got the and. Medical care, comma.
Well, it's medical care and
It's
facilities and educational
I
facilities
don't-
is the intent.
Oh, I
But
see,
you don't,
facilities.
you don't want that in the facilities to be included
I
to
don't-
medical care.
Yeah, I think just medical care myself,
So it's
because medical care could be any type of facility or locale.
medical care, educational facilities, and grocery stores.
Okay. All right. All those objecting, please let me know.
I'm sorry, this is Yolanda speaking.
Hi,
I'm looking at this thinking I'm thinking of the different nations and how we are dictating to them what they're doing for their community. So I would just like to say food sources, not necessarily grocery stores. And that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's our primary sticking point at this point. And I think this is one where I believe we should go with a vote to see how close to a complete consensus that we have. I take, Yolanda, that as a preference for food sources. Let's say, anyone else objecting to goal number 9 as you see it on the screen?
Object.
Okay. We have one here. Ramon is objecting to this. I assume for the grocery stores part of it, or
I do. I think food sources is a little more open, and I think it depends on who you talk to, how you define the word grocery.
okay. Any others? All right, hearing none, I want to move on with this and accept goal number 9 as it's seen on the screen here. Certainly no offense to those who have a different opinion about it. Goal number 10 has no comments, but let's read it again for us, Paki.
Sure. The final goal is to add multimodal functionality to key corridors.
All right.
You just did that with number 9.
All right, so let's go back up to the beginning and let everyone read along.
I get it.
Yeah, all the way.
Okay, so here's your revised plan as of today.
Let's just let them read it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. These will be renumbered.
Okay, has everyone had a chance to take a last look at that? If so, I'll entertain a motion for approval of our framework.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion from Arlen and a second from Dale. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? All right, we've unanimously approved our guiding principles and our goals. And those will we'll remind ourselves of those at all of our meetings as we go forward. And thank you, everyone, for hell of a lot of work to get that done. Carolyn.
There's a couple of things I just have to say. One is a comment, this reminded me of comments that my and Bruce's old boss used to say. Everything's been said before, but not everyone has said it, which has happened. But I also want to say, for those of you that weren't here at the last meeting, this was nothing.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for 3 meetings, I think, and this was good. And I want to thank Eva for bringing that up. It's been really a great discussion, and people have really been working with each other and being respectful. So thanks, everybody, for getting her done.
Yeah.
But I do have a question though, Paki. This was, it talks about in the materials that we are sending our draft framework to the RTA board. And since it's our framework, aren't we sending the framework to the board?
Yes.
Okay.
So this revised framework will go to the board on Thursday for their packet.
Right,
And
but it
they'll
won't
have
be
it.
called a draft anymore, because that's what it said in here.
I believe in order to be adopted, the board needs to. That's how I think we did it last time. So once the board looks at it on a week from Thursday and says fine, then it'll become adopted at that point.
And if they have edits that they want to send back to us. They're not, I mean, they can't do that, right? It's only a draft because they have to actually approve the CAC framework, correct?
My understanding is that if there's a question or concern, they can bring it back, but
Well, how about this? I will attend that meeting and let the board know that we have adopted this and if they actually have any objection to it, then obviously it's their prerogative to express that, but I'll be present and I'm sure there'll be others that will, and Carolyn, I'm sure as well, to let them know what work we've done to come to that. So I wouldn't worry much about the semantics of it. These are the guidelines that we'll be following as we go forward. All right, let's move on to.
Quick,
I'm sorry.
just real quick. Yeah, just real quick on that. Could we get clarification about that in advance? Because I think it seems like a really important piece for us to understand what is under our umbrella versus other committees' umbrella. I love the plan that you just proposed for you and the other chairs to be there to and you know, I all on board. I just think that the technical kind of that technical understanding is important, and I would appreciate a follow-up email from staff explaining that.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Sure, and Amanda, yes, I will make sure to clarify that. If I recall from 18, that was the process, but I will double check because anything can change these days. And I will clarify to all of you what the process will be.
Perfect. Thank you, Paki.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, move on to item number 5. And I believe Josh is up for our delayed discussion of the jurisdictional prioritization reports that we have received to date.
Dancing slides.
Right. And just for time management here, I want to let folks on the call know that Josh has asked for 30 minutes for this presentation and questions and answers and input. We'll try to keep to that. And then we'll have a few minutes for future agenda items before we adjourn. So factor that into your lunch schedule, I guess.
Great. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. This is a bit of a follow-up to the, I guess, 2 meetings ago presentation on the performance grid and interest in going through the report that supports that high-level assessment. So hopefully it won't take 20 minutes, but be happy to address any questions that you have. And really I'm pulling off slides that were available in the orientation materials for the application portal that you all primarily have access to at this point. If you don't, or if you're having any issues logging on to the site, please reach out to myself or Paki, and we'll get you into the platform. But what we're going to be focusing on today is what that performance assessment report is. And just as a reminder, we're in the previous presentation, we're kind of focusing on this high-level assessment grid and what plans and what data sets that red, yellow, green represents as it's displayed across that. What this report is intended to do, this was initially like my homework. It was me QCing, does that red make sense? Am I seeing the data right? And it was my way of being able to make sure I aggregated the content correctly. And then we realized this could be something that would be useful for our partners. So this high-level assessment, this project project assessment overview grid was developed for our long-range plan in alignment with FAST Act requirements. And there are 10 pieces. There's a group here that is performance. Can't read that. I'm sure you all can't either. System maintenance. So that's going to be our pavement and bridges. Safety is that second set here.
Josh, excuse me,
Yes, please.
just a reminder to everyone that these slides are in your packet. So you can refer to those. Now, if this isn't really visible through a split screen if you're out, or if you've run a copy of it, or refer to it afterwards.
Thank you. And so stepping across that top overview grid, that kind of lays out the format of this report. So we start out with system maintenance, pavement and bridges. Then we look at safety, intersection and roadway. Then we look at system performance. And we have a couple of different measures for that. It's intersection, current roadway, and future roadway. This future roadway is the only metric displayed in this grid and in this report that is not a current condition. This is our modeled future roadway congestion. And then the next set is sidewalk presence. And that's kind of a bit of a catch-all for modernization. You know, do you have inconsistent sidewalks? Do you have curb management issues along the facility? And then environmental impact, and then freight. And so that's kind of that high-level overview grid. And this 10-page report, this cover page, gives you that executive summary on the left-hand side. So for each of those emphasis areas, system maintenance, you go across on a row. On the left side of it is the assessed data. So what was that actual number? And then what the heck does that number mean? This is the assessment criteria. What makes it good, fair, or poor? And so we just kind of step through each one of those. So the pavement, the bridges, safety, what's intersection safety, what's roadway safety, what was that level of safety service? And the idea behind the report is we're going to give a page to dwell on what is the distribution of those characteristics over that given extent, and also gives more space to give the metadata and the background on why did we come up with, why are we using IRI for pavement? How did we assess a poorly performing bridge? But this executive summary just kind of gives that high level view. What were the numbers? What was that criteria? And so I'll spare you all from going through that, each and every one of those, because we'll step into that with each of the pages. But that's kind of the layout of this page. And this row for a given emphasis area is, you know, that assessed condition, and then the criteria that moved it into that good, fair, or poor. If it's gray, such as the bridges in this condition, it's not applicable, right? There are no bridges in this sample extent. So we just kind of removed that. And you'll notice as you look on the platform, there are a number of projects that are completely grayed out. That is typically, there's one of two major reasons why we did that. One, it's either a brand new facility and there are no existing conditions, or if we did pull up data, it would have just been on the beginning and end nodes of that project extent, and it wouldn't have been meaningful. The other condition where a project performance may all be grayed out would be where it's on a network asset that is a smaller facility that we don't have this data. And in the previous presentation, I tried to demonstrate some of the, and in the application, you can go and see the map extents. We tried to get data that we could do apples to apples across the region, and on as much of the network as possible, not just focusing on arterials, but trying to go down to collectors and lower level streets. But some of the facilities were on smaller facility. Some of the projects were on smaller facilities. So we just didn't have data for those. So with that, I'll move on to the second slide. So this is the second page. So this is an example of, this is the cover page and then an emphasis area detail. And the layout of each of those supplemental pages is you kind of have your project, your assessment rule up top. what was the data that was acquired for that extent, what were those criteria, a map displaying the extent of the project, and I very unintentionally selected a project that you don't see the end. So I apologize for that. This is an automated report. This is something that we have developed so that our partners, as they're developing the project, they have this at their fingertips. They can get it. So sometimes the scale gets off on some of that. So so in this example that I'm going to be speaking to for the next little bit, the edges are cut, but you can see it all in the web map in the application. Yes.
Sorry, maybe I missed this. If the future roadway, we don't have any conditions yet because it hasn't been built, but these say poor. Why does it say poor for future?
For future roadway, yeah, we can. So if it is a roadway that doesn't exist yet, then it's going to be grayed out. So,
okay,
but for our one of the big exercises that our modeling team steps through is looking at current congestion and future congestion. And that's that future congestion, and what we can dwell on it a little bit on those pages. That future congestion is modeled congestion of that existing facility. But if there is, for an apples to apples comparison of what is the current network look like, we can tell you what that future congestion is going to look, our estimate of what the future congestion looks like for existing facilities. But we have to do additional work, special work, to show you the impact of brand new facilities.
okay, but if this is a road that exists, and you're talking about the future roadway conditions being poor, you're just saying that if nothing is done, it will still be
Right.
poor. Okay, I'm sorry.
Correct. No. And I'll, if you don't mind, I'll jump to that real fast.
Okay.
So this is the slide. This particular slide shows you both the current conditions, and it shows intersections and current modeled conditions, excuse me. And then the future conditions for congestion, for system performance. And what that is taking into consideration is our land use modeling and where we're distributing the population projections and the employment projections as they are expressed in the adopted plans and policies of the local jurisdiction. So Pima Prospers, Plan Tucson, the general and comprehensive plans of the local jurisdictions. So we use those documents to guide our distribution of those future homes and jobs in the region. And based on that, we have this future modeled congestion and a key kind of, and what, if you look closely and when you step through all this, or if you open one of these up on your machine, you'll see the volumes, current volumes and future projected volumes. Those volumes are in part what's influencing that congestion. This is based on on current facility type. So no additional lanes, no additional ITS, no additional, so a no build scenario, but it reflects the growth in the region that we would expect in a 2045 timeline. So all this information is tied to our most recent long range transportation plan, which had a out year of 2045.
Right, so is this going to, are there going to be models when we get projects proposed, and then you'll put information about that, whatever you're doing to the right of that. And then one other question, sorry, Josh, why is the environmental impact just a red, but it's a blank?
Because it was, let's go there, because it was challenging to convey, because it was not a, this metric is less of an expression of the transportation network performance, as opposed to what is the impact of the transportation network on the environmental resources. So it's one that's a little bit different. So is this roadway going through important riparian area? Is this roadway going through a wildlife corridor? So it's a little bit of an inverted, is there poor performance? And so we, you know, I mean, we could have put for good, fair, poor on it. It was kind of a coding thing, but it's a little bit of a difference. It's not, how does our, did that get anywhere close to helping answer it?
That's okay. It just
Okay.
seems like if we know it's an environmental impact, it should be dark red on all of them.
Okay.
So, I mean, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. That's all.
Right, and so getting to that, you can see where if we look at the environmental impact, we have the important riparian areas and the wildlife crossings, and then I'm sorry, intersects with the wildlife corridor, and then that more than 25% of the project intersects with other important biological areas. And those two of those data sets are coming off of the CLS system.
Yes, okay. So you've got biological core and multiple use if that intersects with those
Right.
as well.
Just kind of saying that there are likely going to be additional considerations, costs associated with this project because it's in this area. So there we may need to be looking at additional fencing or you know, those issues.
Thank you.
So
Josh, could you hold
yeah.
on a second? Moss has a question.
Yes.
Thanks, Tom. Kind of on that environmental indicator page,
Yeah.
I'm curious, are there ways, you know, especially reflecting on the guiding principles that we just passed,
Right.
could we layer in other environmental impacts such as air quality and, you know, pollution to measure like what is that impact for especially for the communities, and like noise could be another environmental impact from these types of projects. So I think that might be, and like that noise not only impacts wildlife, it impacts humans. So those types of things would be helpful to, I think, layer into here. And then do you mind going back like a slide or two? There was something about the percentages of congestion.
Can we talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah, cool. So this is the way we provide this data was more of where is our network poorly performing, and in this case, this is more of an indication of where does our transportation network negatively affect things that are important to us as a region with respect to important riparian areas and wildlife corridors. The project level impacts that you're touching on, and I'm really excited about all the work that you all have done and how we're, you know, with refining these goals and priorities and working and stepping through the process with the working group to identify what are going to be those meaningful performance measures and indicators that we can assess. Because this is different than what is the project going to do about it? You know, like is the project improving safety? If this is a poorly performing safety, is the project improving air quality? Is it, you know, so we need to kind of make sure we have those separated.
Okay.
Is that, and I'm sure you're on that, but I mean, and more broadly, there's a lot of this is at the segment or intersection level, is the geographic extent is fairly fine resolution. When you look at some of these other performance indicators that are touched on with some of your goals, they're going to be less project specific. And I mean, we can focus in on what is the best available data at the census tract level or this, that, and the other, but they are going to be a little less project specific and maybe a little more sub-regional that we may be or regional for some of these PMs. Does that address your first question?
I think so. I guess I hear you in saying like this tool is helping us understand the current conditions, impacts, and like what is going on, right? So I have that straight.
Right.
So I guess I think though, where my mind is going is that, we do have traffic counts, right, for a lot of segments.
For sure.
And we could say, okay, well, if there's 10,000 vehicles going along this segment, this is the amount of emissions, right? Assuming like 90% of vehicles are, ICE vehicles and have a tailpipe that we can we can deduce about how much greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants are being emitted into this area.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm offering, is that would provide a baseline essentially for us when we look at what are the impacts of the proposed changes, to say, how is that pollution level getting impacted? Because it is that is a huge environmental impact and also related to health outcomes. So does that help? Am I just misunderstanding your point about this too? I apologize if so.
No, and I guess one of the main points is I'm looking forward to digging into those details with the working group as we look at how do we want to kind of ensure that we're making these measurable priorities.
Okay, so that can get updated. Like this, you're saying this can be updated.
This is what we rolled out 3 years ago when we opened up the project, essentially the call for projects for our partners, and gave them the best available information that we had across these 10 emphasis areas that aligned with our FHWA FAST Act requirements.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, thanks for just breaking that down with me.
Yeah.
And then the second question was, there was something, maybe it was the next slide, there was something about the percentage of congestion I saw.
Right.
Yeah, and am I reading this correctly in that we're saying currently I guess, could you say to me how to interpret that 33%? Current intersections, 33%, like what is that explaining to us?
So having having the data of is an intersection congested or not is one piece of the puzzle. The second piece is what is the criteria that moves it into what's that assessment of good, fair, or poor over a corridor when we have these multiple sources of either points with intersections or roadway segments. And so looking to kind of take that raw data of, we have 2 of the 3 performing intersections are poorly performing, or then that tips it into poor. But if it was just one, so that was kind of the debate, or the exercise that through our long range plan process, we stepped through with our colleagues at the jurisdictions on what they felt comfortable, just kind of making an indicator of, well, if it's 100%, clearly that's bad, but we don't need that threshold. We want to lower that threshold to indicate that there's poor performance. So some of them are FAST Act requirements, and down here, so across the top we have the data and the criteria. So this is kind of like the assessment rule. Here's kind of a display of the data with an attempt to show some of the legend, with the legend below it conveying what you're seeing. And then beneath that is the metadata describing a little bit more. For instance, pavement and bridges are are very detailed by the feds on what is poor performing. And so we were able to lean on that. Others, we built out that criteria to further our long range goals to improve performance in, such as. So when you ask 30%, it's 30% either of the intersections on this, or the 30% of the roadway. too poor and I can't see it. So
Okay, so 30, so it would be, so to, if I were to try to tell this to a prospective voter, I would say that this is saying currently 33% of the intersections in this
correct.
area are considered
Right.
congested.
Yeah, and so because what a poorly performing intersection is a level of service E or F. And so we have 3 intersections in this extent, and this is the perfect example of the map cutting off the edges where there are the intersections. But if you look in the count of intersections by LOSS, as I'm gesturing physically to the screen, you'll see that 1 is LOSE and 2 are LOSC. So 33% of the intersections on this extent are poorly performed. And so the criteria, system performance is based on percent congested, where greater than 25% or greater of that, the number of intersections or the extent of the roadway, if it is calculated as congested, it shows up red as poorly performing. So those are thresholds that, you know, we went with as we kind of established this in 2017 through our RMAP exercise. But that's how you read that. And so the other one would be the current 2019 roadway is 36% congested. That is 36% of the length of that project is considered congested.
Thank you. That clears it up a lot to me. I will just note, I think it's interesting. Did I hear right that level C is considered is being lumped in as congestion, even though I think that's like kind of like the golden standard.
Yeah, it's not. So level C, 2 of them are LOSC, and so that's why, and 1 is LOSC.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, I just misheard you. Okay, I
Okay,
got it. Josh.
cool.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Cool. And one thing to note with congestion, since we're in this space right now, and part of the, you know, showing these 2 together, the reason why we go with modeled current congestion is so that we can look at it in comparison to modeled future congestion. And so that that rate of change is what is kind of the piece to focus on with this, and the rate of change of those volumes. You know, these are our modeled 2019 modeled volumes. That data is validated and calibrated by a very extensive count program where we survey certain class of facilities once every 3 years. That data all goes to inform our transportation model. But that rate, the value, so if we were to go back and look at explicit counts for this given facility on 2019, they may not be exactly what we're showing, but they should be in the ballpark, right? They should be within a reasonable expectation of what we're displaying. But then the rate of change between the current model volumes and the future model volumes is what we want to be able to stick to, so that that comparison is meaningful.
Just Josh, just a real quick summary of level of service. In general, it's a measure that traffic engineers use to kind of quantify how well an intersection or a segment of roadway is operating. That is the amount of congestion. And typically in urban transportation engineering, an effort would be made to project an improvement to a segment of a roadway that would deteriorate within a 20-year period to no less than level of service D. Obviously, level of service A is good on day 1, but as soon as traffic increases, you're going to have you know, that's going to deteriorate somewhat. And over the 20-year period, you're not expecting to be able to keep it at that level unless you gave 12 lanes to every roadway. And so just from a modeling standpoint, level of service D at the terminal year, that 20-year period, is often, if not nearly always, what a traffic engineer or a transportation engineer would be looking to do when they decide. And most of the jurisdictions, I'm looking at Josh and also at Rick, I am assuming are proposing roadway improvements that will allow them to achieve those kinds of improvements or that level of service at the end of it.
Thanks for that explanation.
Yeah.
Tom, and I really appreciated you also kind of introducing induced demand there too, with the explanation about it might start at Ellis level of service A and then increase to one of the other ones over time. So I just appreciate that breakdown. And one other question I had on this, does this only consider personal vehicle, or like, you know, vehicle travel, rather than does it account for people using transit on this segment, bicycle, pedestrian, any of that? Is that part of the level service calculation?
Yeah, so it looks at vehicles, which incorporates transit. So there is a transit module. And you had had this question last time, and I mostly got it right. I went back and connected with our modeling manager about the details. You know, basically, so what you're seeing is vehicles. So we're not modeling person throughput as it for bikes and peds on this, but what it does reflect is the transit, and looking at mode split by trip type, that places, you know, driving, whether it's driving alone or carpooling, we're looking at 84% of the trips being vehicular, and then 4% being transit. Bike and walk, the number of trips are 12%, but then when you look at the number of person miles, while you may have a lot of walk trips, they're not going to be very long, right? So those percentages kind of come smaller. And auto-oriented person miles, because this allows us to account for transit component. So mode split by person miles, auto-oriented is 93%, and transit drops from that 4% down to 1.5%. And then, so, you know, between those two, you know, we're looking at 95% of the person miles traveled are being modeled, and the bike and walk are less than, are, you know, the remaining 5%. So the platform is looking at congestion. It has a mode choice decision logic model that whether or not an individual in the platform, in the model, will decide to take walk to a transit facility and take that transit facility, or whether they're going to have a park and ride or a kiss and ride lot where they get dropped off at a transit area. So we do model that. The overall impact on our system are smaller proportions. And so that's why we're focusing on the transit and the auto, and don't have the ability to model the bike and ped.
Josh, how are we doing on time?
We're not doing well. We're 12 minutes over.
It's kind of the royal we there.
Yeah. I mean, So the intent of this report is to be able to show you kind of the data behind it. I had touched on level of on safety and level of safety service last time. Our level of safety service is based on our safety performance functions. That is a state-of-the-art predictive modeling method that is we've kind of stepped through 2 different iterations of. We did it initially in 2016, and then we did it in 2019, just prior to rolling out this platform for our partners to submit their projects in December of 2019. It looks at the universe of incidents and facility types as they relate to a facility class. So we have 6 different facility classes. 2 are intersection related, a 3-leg and a 4-leg signalized intersection, and 4 are roadway related, one of which is a rural roadway, and the other 3 are urban. So it kind of, it's a more sophisticated way than looking at purely crash rate, and looking at what is the expected crash volumes, crashes at that intersection, with the intent of, so you draw a function, you draw that line through those data points of the observed crashes and the volumes associated with the facility type. And you look at what portions are above, standard deviations above that expected. And so that gives us, and which ones are below. So the threshold between 2 and 3 is what's expected. So anything of a level of safety service 2 is below what's expected. The level of safety service 3 is above what's expected. And similarly, 1 and 4 are the further extremes of the standard deviation. So that allows us to focus and prioritize which areas are underperforming in a safety perspective and what areas should receive attention. So that's in part what's conveyed here. We give some of the data on the raw counts of the safety on the next slide. We touched on congestion, current and future.
I think this is really good for introducing this. I think though that some homework by the committee is needed.
Yeah.
What I'd like to suggest is that everybody go look at this, make sure that you've ingested and understood what Josh has told us thus far, and then get back to him with questions that you might have or further clarification. Some of this is getting too deep in the weeds for a lot of us, and some of us could listen to it for days and get really into the details. And it's a difficult balancing act. You have a tremendous amount of detail in these already. And I think everyone should try to get as up to speed on them as they can. And remember that some feedback would be helpful also as we're moving into the next phase here, which is trying to develop a rating system and understanding which of these metrics really works for our guiding principles and our goals. Last question before we move on to our next item is from Arlen Passes. Okay. All right. Thanks, Josh. Greatly appreciate it. I'm sorry to
Sorry to go on
a little bit short here, but there was some awesome stuff. Okay. Any future agenda items that people would like to contribute? Please let me know. Moss?
I guess I'm not sure if maybe it's a future agenda item in that we could frame it that way, but kind of to your point of what you were just describing, I'm wondering, could we get a timeline that could you develop a timeline, Tom and Mary and Carolyn, and if we need to weigh in on it, I think that would be really helpful, and with specific steps, for example, over the course of the next month, so now that we have guiding principles behind us generally, that, what is our task? And then, okay, from there, we'll come back and we will do yada yada, or simultaneously the evaluation subcommittee is going to be doing that. Something like that, I think would be really helpful, just so we have something to reference and refer and go, you know, in the coming weeks to know what our, you know, quote unquote homework is, and you know,
Great
just
comment, and I have started that, and we've been talking about it. So hopefully by, well, for sure, I'll promise by the next meeting, we will have that. By the way, our next meeting will fall on a holiday, and we won't convene. So our next meeting will be September 19th. All right. Any other agenda items? Hearing none, I would just like to thank everyone. We had our best attendance yet today, and it was a great meeting. I appreciate everyone's participation, and I'll see you again on the 19th. The committee is adjourned.
thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.